As we continue to talk about guys that we should or shouldn't pay, one of the guys that I think we should be paying is Grover Stewart. This is a guy that year after year just continues to get better and affect the games more and more. In the last few years, you saw in the numbers he was putting up in terms of tackles and sacks. But this year, the numbers down, right? He played in 6 games, has 20 tackles, 7 assisted tackles, and is yet to record a sack this season. So the numbers aren't really there, but his effect on the game was probably greater this year than it has been in the past. And he's been a game wrecker these last few years. Him and DeForest Buckner being on the field at the same time is an absolute problem for offenses. And if you're looking at the numbers since Grover Stewart went out, right, when he was here, when Grover Stewart was in the lineup, first 6 games of the year, Colts were giving up 113 rush yards a game at 3.7 yards per carry. That was one of the best in the league. That's a really elite number for a defense. But then these last 4 games against the Browns, the Saints, the Panthers, and the Patriots, we're giving up 154 yards per game at 4.7 yards per carry. It's actually 4.63 yards per carry. So as we look at those numbers, right, giving up 40 more yards rushing per game, giving up a yard per carry more per game, right? And those 40 yards is 4 first downs. We're giving up that much more since Grover Stewart's been gone. And I think his value has done nothing but go up since his suspension started. Right, that first week, the Browns with Jerome Ford leading the way in the rush game scored 39 points. The Saints scored 38 points. Taysom Hill was running all over the place. Alvin Kamara doing his thing. The Panthers, who have had a terrible offense all year, put up more rushing yards than they did passing yards. And then the Patriots, who still only had 6 points, but had a bunch of rushing yards on us. Like, teams are gashing us. They're running right where Grover Stewart's supposed to be. They know where the weakness is and they're attacking it. So Grover Stewart is going to be an important piece of this team as we continue to go. Now, he is going to be 30 years old. So as you look through some of these other defensive tackles and what their numbers is, right? You take Aaron Donald out of it. He's 31 years old, but he's Aaron Donald. He's, probably the best defensive player to ever play football. So you look at other guys, and the ones I want to look at, one of them here, Javon Hargrave, just signed a deal this past offseason for 4 years, $84 million. That's $21 million a year on average. And again, that's a 30-year-old defensive tackle, 4-year contract. So these things are different for defensive tackles, right? And it's player by player, especially with these interior defensive linemen, because, a lot of these guys get up near 30 years old and, you basically stop hearing about them. But some of these guys are just built different, right? Javon Hargrave is kind of different because he gets after the passer. DeForest Buckner also making $21 million, pretty much the exact same contract, actually. DeForest was 25 when he signed a 4-year, $84 million contract. But these guys get after the quarterback more. Grover has 8.5 career sacks. So while he's got better at it through his career, he's more the run stopper, right? He makes sure the run game is sound. Okay, but another guy to look at here, Chris Jones, who is currently on a 1-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs, agreed to a deal this year that was $19.5 million. Now, that also doesn't cover all the games this season. So, it probably would have been a little above Javon Hargrave if all the games were included in this. But still, 29 years old, 1 year, $19.5 million. But again, Chris Jones, not only great in the run game, but gets after the passer and is usually the leader of defensive tackles and sacks. It's either, Aaron Donald. But again, Aaron Donald plays every position on the defensive line. Right, but then a couple more guys to look at here. Cam Hayward was 31 years old when he signed a 4-year, $65.6 million contract, making $16.4 million a year, and that was in 2020, right? And Cam Hayward is still great. He's still one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So that's what I'm talking about. Some of these defensive tackles are just built different, dude. They get over 30 and they continue to either just sustain what they do or continue to get better with age. And Cam Hayward's been one of those guys. He earns his $16.4 million a year, right? And then a guy like David Onyemata, who just this past offseason at 30 years old signed a deal for 3 years, $35 million. That's $11.6 million a year. So these ranges go up and down, right? But these last couple guys, Cam Hayward, David Onyemata, these are guys that, don't get after the passer as much, but they're amazing in the run game. So some of these things, you kind of got to weigh differently. You got to look at Grover and his own situation, right? He's been an absolute beast. He's going to be 30 years old. I would assume the plan is, you keep Grover and whatever his contract is. When you give DeForest his new contract, you try to keep DeForest right around what he's making right now. But you want to keep those two together, right? If you're keeping DeForest, it's because you want to keep those two guys together as long as you possibly can. So if we're able to do that and we're able to bring Grover Stewart back, right? We've already talked about Kenny Moore and Michael Pittman Jr. as guys that we should re-sign for next season. And with the money that would come off the books for them, we would have $40 million. If my projections happen, it would be $40 million that you still have to spend throughout free agency. Grover Stewart, I think a 3-year deal worth $36.75 million is a good number. Have Grover Stewart making 12.25 a year, make 24.5 of that. So the first 2 years fully guaranteed. And in terms of a signing bonus, when I look at the average annual value of his current contract at 10.25 million a year, I think that's what they should give him in a signing bonus. And I might be playing hardball. I feel like with the way some of these contracts are, and as much as salary cap's going up, that number might need to be a little higher. But I think 12.25 a year seems like a good number for Grover, where some of these other guys are and where Grover is in his career and what he does and the output we get from him. Again, he's not a guy that's like rushing the passer all the time. He's just amazing in the run game. So being able to lock him up 12.25 again sounds like a good number. I wouldn't be surprised if that number creeps up toward 14 or 15 mil with the way the salary cap is nowadays. But I'd like to know what you think about re-signing Grover Stewart. What do you think the numbers should look like? You let me know down in the comments section. And be sure to hit that like button and subscribe with notifications on. We're going to have another video later, somebody that I think that we should be moving on from through this offseason. This one kind of breaks my heart, but it's got to happen. I think it's got to happen. So we're going to have a video on that and more throughout this week. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified when all those videos do come out. And with that said, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.